Let's get this party started.
Absolutely. It shall never end. Welcome, guys. Thank you again for joining, for gathering for these how-to sessions. Um, Second day of the week. I hope the week is rolling out with a bang for everybody. This is again our how-to sessions regular. For those who are new, we exchange on marketing subject. I step in as your marketing consultant, and I have my co-host with me, Robert the Blakester. We ask what you can ask questions that we will answer or cover subjects of a matter of interest. Um, we will be putting links in the chat for those who basically want to follow up on the content. It's usually shared across these links. And we should get started with our traditional round of questions on how to now site for those who have any general questions. Everything is faring good with the tool so far. Again, during the conversation, if there is a question specific that comes about in the use of the tool or general, you can always raise your hand and we'll address them. Right now, for those who are following us, have been following us so far, we're prepping for our master class on Friday. In the email notification that I sent you today, there is a brief on that, and I'll be rolling out a follow-up after this session. So everything that we've been covering so far has been a built up to that session or to what we will be doing next, going into the deeper realms of conversation using our CRM, since the big problem when we're marketing is making sure that we are coming to the game ready with a conversation that is optimized for conversion. After that, it becomes basically the work cycle, the workflow that we will be repeating. For the last part of this branding capsule, before we dive deeply into that CRM email strategy, we'll be looking at competitor analysis. Um, there's a saying that goes, I mean, that an old saying, keep your friend closer, but your enemy even closer. And there's value in understanding what your competitors are doing, especially with everything that we have come to understand on how to build our brand ourselves and how to evaluate them, trying to find this unique position value, right, that we are trying to put forward. It becomes very important to understand what is happening in the direct market in which we're going to be operating, in which the consumer is also being exposed or conversation it's being exposed to. It's a great way basically to quickly also level your game. When you're not sure what to do, well, follow the leaders in your business. Follow the competitors as well. It's only, I used to say that a lot in the form of a joke. It's only in school that copying what your friend is doing is cheating. In real life, it's following the right example. It's following the right leaders, right? And we have to keep that in mind. Competitors, for example, will do things that will allow us to actually field test certain ideas. Because if I've been thinking about something and a competitor is almost doing the same thing, then there's knowledge to be gained there, right? If I don't understand uh, properly what the audience is reacting to, well, quick competitor study can allow me to, to align myself with what the audience is expecting. And remember, at this point in time, as we are diving closer to CRM, which is client relationship management, the understanding of the audience or the influence that the audience is subject to is very important. Right? So we have gone across these documents. They're all available once again to everybody who has Now Site, or even if you don't, by taking advantage of the free link for the team, you can access this content as well. It's in the team environment here in the account. And everything that we've been covering so far in between the previous masterclass and the next one is in the masterclass recap section. And I have a document there for you, the competitor analysis. A few simple points that you want to keep in mind. If you haven't, you will discover them. If you have, well, it's a summary for you to come back to, right? We have also in that the unique brand value position, which I think it's something which is important to always keep in mind now that you have gone through the exercise of understanding this. Have these strong points, these strong attributes that basically allow you to leverage your conversation properly, always in mind. And then understanding what is happening in the field. All right. And for example, for those who were with us Monday during the last transition, one of my wins was going out in the field to explore what I could do. It wasn't necessarily crowned with success, but for me, it was a win. Why I was out there. I understood a little bit more of the dynamics. I understood the level of adversity or how the competition is getting access to doors that I don't have, right? And this is the same approach, whether you're doing it uh, in on the field, right, in the real world, or marketing online. You often enough will have to adapt to the environment, but the approach will remain the same. I need to know what I'm getting into. That saying, we most likely have all said that when we're offering products, right? I need to know what I'm getting into. I'm already using something. I don't want to disrupt my wheel. I need to know what I'm getting into. Same goes for you, right? If you, and this holds also so much value in this day and age where everybody has access to AI and there's always new breeds of AI coming about, right? So we always have to pay close attention to what the others are doing. Because if we see, for example, something that we haven't seen them do before, we pay attention. If we see them doing something that we were thinking about doing, we pay attention, right? Generally, basically, to give you again, not to repeat myself or to show them in a different way. When you have gone through the process of building your own brand identity and have understood your 5 attributes, of course, these are the values or the scales that you'll be using to rate what the brand is doing, what the competitor brands are doing, or what you're up against in your market, right? Uh, Competitor analysis for me doesn't even, it's not something that happens at the end. I know that in the sequence of the conversation that we're having, I'm putting this at the end here, but it's something that's present throughout all the branding exercise, right? When you're testing your brand, scalability, for example, when you're going to see if this word or this name that you have opted to use is already used online. Already what you're looking at is competitor analysis, right? When you're looking at your audience, trying to understand how to speak to them and how they have reacted in the past to other things. That is also a form of competitor analysis, right? It could be, for me, it should be done, especially if in a case where you're going into a new business that you do not understand, or you're giving a new product that you do not understand. Well, that should be done before, during, and even after you are involved in that conversation. Because at the same time that you're going to be looking at the product, understanding the industry in which the product is, you're going to be exposed to its competitors. Unless you have usually these one in a lifetime opportunities to break the market with a new product that nobody has on their shelves, right? And this is really rare. But often enough, we go again through the industries. We're attracted to certain specific industries or product because there is a crowd around it. There's a community, right? And that forces us to understand, okay, what this community likes, what do they are being offered. In this case, how our competitors are interacting on that community, right? So this is very important, a simple thing. And for example, simple attributes that we usually will note firsthand is how they say things. How do they say the same thing that I'm trying to do? And this is common, for example, in our network marketing affiliation. We're brought in by mentors that teach us a certain way. There are other teams, other mentors that claim success, that do certain things, and we want to understand how they're approaching those conversations. So the tone, for example, which is something that we are forced to also consider when we're building our brand, right? And there's a lot, but it boils down to making a choice and sticking with it, right? We have AI to help us with all the data analysis or creation of the content, and it boils down to making a choice that we understand and also that we start owning. Owning is embodying this conversation every step of the way, right? The choice of value, core values, right? Visual identities, um, pricing are things that we usually will blatantly learn to understand or evaluate from the competitors, right? But we also want to start going a little bit deeper, knowing what we have been doing. The the document again is available, so you'll be able to go over it. I'm just going to glance through it as we're discussing this, and we'll go into conversation about shares or how you have gone into this exercise or experienced that on a consumer side, but also on the business side. It is important. So usually when you're doing those things, there are certain opportunities that you will notice. If you were thinking about approaching the market with a specific conversation and you didn't, for example, do your market analysis, even just a brief overview, you might fall into using things that have been already said, lacking your uniqueness in the way you choose to position your offer, right? So, and this is also something usually that with the idea or the tool that we have at creating a lot of different format of conversation, we get the test as long as we are applying, right? For example, correct me if I'm wrong, Robert, in your strategy of having your 12 emails beyond the five that I usually recommend the beginners start with, you've gone through a series of tests to get that perfect balance from 1 to 6, from 6 to 12, correct?
Well, yes, and not just that, it's statistically proven across the board, right? Anytime you go from that eighth to the 12th touch, you're 80% more likely to close that customer versus the first through the eighth touch, right? So that being said, you can develop your email campaign however you want to. I just always recommend to go at least eight to 12 just simply because of that reason. Doesn't mean it's going to take you those 8 or 12 emails for them to close, but at least you have that cushion or padding, if you will. That's just kind of how I look at it, right? If I only give them five, then I'm at least three short of trying to increase my percentages or my law of averages to try to get them to join whatever it is that I want them to join.
Absolutely. And for a fact, statistically means that these are practice that have been done by people in your field, by other people, also by competitors, right? It's most likely something that you feel strongly comfortable with because you understand that the competition is also using this strategy and seeing success with it, right? And you have also, of course, tested your content, right? Because uh, putting 12 emails in a row because we're following a specific strategy is definitely the template. But within that conversation, email after email, the content also will have a different impact. So sticking to that doesn't stop the fact that you're going to need to test or pay specifically attention to what is happening during the course of the first rollout. Before you leave things in cruise control, they have to be tested. That's really the point that I'm making. And when you're testing, you have to know what you're trying to spot,
Yeah,
right?
absolutely,
Picking
because
up a
numbers
pattern.
don't lie, right? So if you don't have the
Exactly.
data, then you don't see where you're at, and then you don't know where you're going, right? I talk about that all the time. Yeah, got to
Exactly.
have the numbers so you know what's going
Absolutely.
on.
Absolutely. So again, a fast track to numbers often enough is looking what the competitor is doing, right? If you're seeing, I often will try things that I don't necessarily intend on pursuing, but I want to see what happens with the onboarding process because the onboarding process is the most important phase for me at this stage of the conversation, consolidating the knowledge behind or building a strong foundational process that will endure the test of time, at least as long as the tools are still the same, right? This is what I'm gunning for. So it's really understand the value in doing that little bits of research, right? Understand what your competitors are doing because this allows you also to have fast track to that data that we're speaking of in a way, right? It's they're testing out things that you don't necessarily need to test when you know them. They're speaking in ways that can allow you to use those as blueprint for what you're going to be doing. Make sense? Go ahead, Robert.
So I just want to pose a question to you so that you can clarify for the audience.
Mhm.
With what you're speaking of right now, is that primarily designed for creation of a new business? Or, does this pertain to people that are in the network marketing profession or affiliate marketing? Or where would you see this exactly guided to?
Well, at all stage, this applies. For example, in the creation of the business, at the creational level itself, or branding, or even just product design, you have to understand what the competitor of doing or have done to optimize your approach. After you have decided, or even when you are deciding how to formulate that offer, create that product. Network marketing is the same, right?
Right.
Especially in network marketing. We
I
have to be
just
aware of what everybody else is doing so that we can breach the gap more quickly or
Right. I
optimize.
just wanted to clarify that and then put it into a real world scenario. So let's say you and I are both selling the same product.
Mhm.
Go ahead, elaborate on that. Then I would want to go see what you're doing, right? And how are you able to have whatever successes you're having? What are you offering? Are you offering, something more than other people are, right?
Absolutely. All of that. You're selling basically, we are selling the same product. Depending on at which point in time I came in or you came in into that opportunity, you have all that field testing time, right? So already there, everything that you have done, if I pay close attention to it, it's a fast track learning for me to make the right decisions to get to the same level. Hence, for example, us following the leadership in an affiliate type downline, right? We decide to follow this leader because we understand that the product that we choose, we both adhere to it, that we chose, we both adhere to it. But moreover, what the person is doing is an example for me to follow to catch up speed quickly, right?
Exactly,
It's
exactly.
it's friendly competition, but it's still a form of competition. It's leadership. I want to be as good as my leader,
Yeah.
right?
Cool.
And
Appreciate that. And
hopefully,
I wanted to
yeah,
pose that as a question so that we could clarify for anybody that was watching and wasn't clear.
absolutely. If, for example, similarly in this network marketer, for example, environment, often enough we have leadership that will shift interest and leave people without guidance, right? What happens? Well, you will look automatically to the next leader. If you decide to join his team or not, one of the things is you'll start paying close attention to how they are representing the product, or you will need to do so to find your bearings. And this is just at a micro level, right? If you're looking at bigger things, for example, you're representing a product, a software as a product company, and on that shelf, there are similar or almost similar products, right? Understanding how the position that allows you to rebound on your product. For example, when I was running the meetings with Now Site, one of the conversation one of the competition or the competitors that often enough came in the room with certain clients was go high level, right? And go high level is a powerful tool. If you have that understanding, that higher understanding and that higher rate of organization, because there's a learning curve there, right? So if your goal is agility, then in a conversation, at each time, for example, that conversation or that product came aboard, I would dismiss the argument with just that. If you're looking at agility in being able to execute quickly, test ideas, and creating a system that you can build upon long term easily, then, well, be careful with that choice. Why? Because I can implement the same strategy as we are talking, and often enough, this was when I went into the demonstration. I can implement our conversation in basically marketing asset in real time as we're having it. It would most likely, as I understood the tool, it would most likely take you a few tiers, rounds to get all that system in there, depending on your mastery of that other tool, right? And I'm not sure it is true because I haven't used the tool, but at least as a glance, everybody that came from that conversation came with that conversation and came with the experience of that tool. The conversation, the objections, or the thought was dismissed because, okay, well, it's the truth, it's a fact. I know my product, but I also know the competition's product, right? And believe me, I never thought that I would have to understand a lot of these products during these sessions because my mandate initially was just to discuss about NowSite until the conversation kept coming about other tools, right? Because again, this is something that happens when you're in the industry. People have experience that they bring to the conversation. And this is where you go into that complex but simple interaction with the client. Go ahead, Robert.
Well, what that brings me to my mind anyway, is the fact that you need to know what the competition is doing anyway, in case it's thrown out in front of you, so you know how to react, right? Well, yeah, that's a great point. However, and then try to rebuttal that stuff.
Part of objection handling, for example, requires, as you said, to know what the product is saying. What
Right.
is the competition doing? Because especially, for example, in cases where people already have a set system that you need to optimize, right? Because this is where the battle is waged. We already have a service. Okay, you already have a service, but does it do this in particular? Knowing well that it doesn't, I will ask that question because I want you to swim.
Either that or I'll break out the illustrious Phil Felt Found.
There you go. And even that will impact how I decide to open the conversation with the emotion. Which emotion do I pick? Right? The pain point. If I know that your tool is not giving you this satisfaction, then the interest is giving you an answer right there, right? Like I said, it's something that happens technically throughout the process of building your brand, establishing a strategy, and optimizing everything that is coming through. What is the competitor doing? Because unless you're the alpha in your field and there's nobody up to look up to. So you're just looking at the sky and free range testing things because you're too big, for example, to fail, as they say. Unless you're in that position, there's always somebody that is doing something. Why? Because they just had the opportunity to come in at the business maybe before you. They had access to greater resources or such. This is usually our nemesis in the field, but no, it's your friend, it's your best friend. Look at what he's doing. Remember, we're no longer at school. Remember, it's not a race. Everybody has their own pace, right? You come into a game, you come into an industry, well, there's friendly competition, there's direct competition. The more knowledge of that you have by default, understanding your opponent, for example, is better mastering your art yourself because you know what type of conversation to avoid, you know what type of situation to avoid because you know that the competition has a stronger hand to play, right? So this is important. It can happen at a glance, or at least it should be done at a glance, right? For example, you pick a name, well, go on Google and Google the name and see who else is in this industry with that name. Already there, that knowledge of the competition will influence the way you decide to present your brand, right? You come up with a slogan that you feel is your unique value position. You have rated it through the AI, it came out strong. Well, then test it to see if there's anything related to that in out there. And if so, how was it used? That gives you a lot of data. Go ahead, Robert.
Yeah, so just to throw in another 2 cents here, right when it came to my branding and being the Blakester, I had been called the Blakester since it was the military, right? So I went with that for many years, and then I go on YouTube, and then there's this kid named Blakester, and then there's another guy named Blakester. I'm like, who are all these fake imposters? You know what I'm saying? Like, so yeah,
Yeah. And
there's
sometimes you
only
want to,
one real,
there's
the
on the real Blakester stand up.
yeah.
There's a song like that. And it's true. So sometimes, and for branding, for example, I am involved right now in uh, well, a service offer, and the brand itself had something which was very pleasant is that the person had branded the brand with their name. And the first thing I did was basically Google the name, and nobody across all industry was using that name. Right. And that was a good way already to have to understand that, well, whatever we do with this in the marketing, in the online space, we'll always have that simple reference to use to get people to that traffic, to that asset, to that brand, right? And that's powerful. Sometimes just knowing that can influence your conversation with a client. And that was important because knowing that said, okay, yeah, let's stick with this and notice. This is also show of expertise, right? There's one thing about also overturning objections is if you know your competitors' pros and cons and weakness, well, in leveraging your own strength, you can actually use that, right? You have certain programs that allow you to do this, but we can do it faster. Do you know this program? Yeah, look, this is the learning curve here. This is the execution cycle, right? Right there, before even any objection came about, I brought you and I brought the product on the table. You know that product? Great. Let me show you how ours will outperform that. I already started overturning objections often enough. That is also a direct sales. Do you know this product? Yeah. Oh, I'm here to offer you better. Leveraging the compensation, leveraging on this is one thing as well. When you're trying, and this is important for us that are in hard products. I'm in fashion. I want to create my own brand. I'm creating my own products. I'm putting them on the shelf, and right there, there's competition on the shelf. So understanding where my product is going on the shelf is key for me, even at the design part, right? I have to know the audience, but I also have to know my shelf. And this is important, right? Understanding who you are in the industry with who your clients or your audience is also looking at, again, will allow you to only position your offer stronger. And it also helps you understand what you need to do. what you need to say. Remember that one of the tools, for example, that NowSite gave us in the social tools was make it your own, right? Why do you think this was done? That was a direct use of that strategy. You don't have to write it yourself. If somebody great has done it, take it, rewrite it. It's not plagiarizing because you're reformulating, you're making it your own, but you're keeping that good practice or that good address, right? That very tool is made on that, right? So there are certain fundamentals that you always want to keep in mind. There are certain check marks that you want to make sure you have done for your own. And often enough, for example, this one is missed because we want to be, remember that being unique, right, is not being the only one in your field. That's usually very hard to achieve. It's having your own personal way of expressing yourself. And by default, we're all unique because we all have a personality, right? So looking at what people do and then taking it and giving it your expression is something that we practice often. It's even more important for your competitors. Remember, I look at my friends, I look at Robert, I do things, I keep in mind what he's doing, right? He's my friend. He's my direct community member, right? He's my co-host, right? But then there are people that I am in direct competition with, and I keep a even closer eye on what they're doing because that industry or what they're doing here, or I am in direct the market directly with them. And this is important. It helps me as well also transfer certain skills. Okay, this is what I learned here. This is how they're doing it. This is how it comes together. This is how I can add my touch to it and feel confident that I'm coming across in a unique way. Question so far? It's straightforward as it is, but still, go ahead, Robert.
No question, but just as a gold nugget or whatever, once you do have it all figured out, and if you are working from home, claim your Google listing. That's another cool little tip there. So I went and I searched because of what you said. I asked for sales psychology coaches near Sinton, Texas, and I put in the screenshot there. But it did show up. It came up for my company name, the Black Rose Solutions, not my personal branding. But that's because of having that Google listing.
Okay. Yeah, you using those tools. The Google listing, I think they're offering even free ads when you start using their service or that when you activate your account properly, don't they?
Yeah, they do. I've never even really had to use any ads. It's just even having your name listed under
Mhm.
that Google service is still going to help you because if somebody's looking for you, it'll help them find you quicker, right?
Absolutely. That
Yeah.
also, for those who are always concerned with, I mean, I'm trying to bring it up at the same time, I'm getting lost. For those who are always concerned with SEO, well, that is also one of the things that you want to be doing. SEO, search engine optimization. If you're not listed in the engine by default catalog of contacts, you won't be optimizing anything there,
Right.
right?
It just says in here,
So
if you set it up properly, they actually send you clients. She said she gets at least five per month. So that's pretty cool.
I see. Perfect. We're gonna have to do a workshop on that to help us everybody out here understand that. Go ahead, Lisa.
I was just inspired to Google myself,
Uh-huh.
which I haven't done in a while. And you talk about competition. There are at least five other Dr. Lisa Singletary MDs. So,
Wow.
but on the other hand, I pretty much dominate the search
Sure.
because of what I've been putting out. And I think because of some of the practices I have of with the SEO of labeling my images, the metadata and labeling the metadata of my files. So um, Yeah, but I
So
was surprised. I was surprised to find images of five different Dr. Lisa Singletary, MD.
there you go.
I'm just happy we inspired you.
Yeah, absolutely.
And that is also like another golden tip there for everybody. If when it happens that you are not the only one in your industry, if you are prolific, if you're staying active, usually you appear first because in that space, you're the only one that is there or actively present, right? So that is also two things. List yourself and actively create content. So that way, when somebody searches you, well, we know that we're looking for you because you're the one that are the most present there. Simple things, simple mechanics. That brings us slowly back to the use of the My AI. So for a lot of content, sharing your links so that they appear across different platforms and having the right message so that it engages people to click on them. That is the interaction that we're looking for. That is the win-win reaction that we want. Oh, I have your message up. I was going to share what you sent. This is it, right?
Yeah,
Hmm.
yeah. And then I just did another search, sales psychology coaches named Robert. And mine popped up right at the top because of a listing that I have with my business partner on his platform called purplebiz.net. So I
It's
haven't seen
funny.
that pop up in a while. That's cool.
It's funny when we were starting to get into the whole branding exercise and Facebook. At one point, the um, um, expression Google me. If you don't know me, Google me, find
Yeah.
me, because I'm known was a running go-to for gags or for bravado calls. But
Yeah.
it's a true. It's actually beyond bravado for us. We need to be actively seeing what our brands are doing across these search engines.
So I would
By
say
doing
that.
that,
I would
mhm,
say that before back in the day. And then you've got, of course, Dr. Edward Thomas that says, that's your problem. You're too busy Googling yourself.
it is true. But at one point it's going to become a problem for all of us or a necessity, right? If you're actively doing things and trying to rise to ranks in the listings or in the search or as proof of activity, you're going to see what is happening, right? Constantly. It's also part of your market research. How is my product performing versus the brand, right? The idea is to see who's appearing on top of you and how, why, and pick up data on that. All right, simple things. It can be a very, like I said, at a glance exercise. This was at a glance. You did this, but if you dive deeper into that exercise, you'll see, well, there's a lot of value there. And usually these are, again, fundamental values. They stay a long time with you as long as there's no major shift in the industry or major shift in your product. Uh, it's data that will follow you for a while.
Well, the
Make
big thing
sense?
about this that I love and that we're having the conversation to begin with is because this isn't something that's normally taught either, right? You end up having to find this out, and as a young aspiring entrepreneur or network marketer, this is not something that you learn. You just don't, right? You learn it, but after you've been falling on your face for many, many years, and yeah. So I'm
I
glad we're having this conversation. Tons of value, brother. Good
I
stuff.
got I got I got thrusted in that in the competition conversation in my early days of business. We were marketing a new brand of clothing. It's when hip hop clothing were emerging, so they were not carried by big stores. It was small stores, mom and pop shop a mom and pop's type shop there, and we had opened a friend, me and a friend had opened one small shop in our city. We thought it was unique, it was cool, but very quickly we realized that there are two other major players in that industry in that city, and we had to adapt to what they were doing, what they were saying, how they were positioning themselves, because we were in well, I wouldn't say a small city, it was Ottawa. So it was a sizable city, but the clientele being very reduced, right, was it was a small market. So we were actively always having an eye on what the competition was doing. If they were promoting their merchandise through events, we had to match the speed. Why? Because it worked. If they're doing something that worked, we're not going to break that wheel. We're going to take it, revamp it, own it, and process it, right? And that even started a store war in terms of, I'll say a friendly war. Nobody got hurt, nobody got punched, but it was conversation. And there was one thing that happened even through that is that we were representing a brand that we didn't necessarily have the right to represent in our store. And what they did is they sent the inspector to check up on us. And when the inspector came, I went into a business conversation with him and got an invitation to go back and get uh, more out of that exchange than just the one right of a brand, but more. It opened up an opportunity for more contract. So even the competition being aware of us, sending us what should have been adversity, turned out to be a profit exchange, right? Again, fast track to understanding in which environment you're going to be operating, fast track into understanding things that you need to be aware, maybe that you weren't knowledgeable about coming in while your competitors will or might have covered those ground for you. Go ahead, Robert.
Well, the conversation is just unlocking not only memories, but just other things to kind of point towards this. Competition is actually a good thing because it also can motivate you, if nothing else, right? I back in the day, many times have had that I'll just say it like it is, that notion in my brain that I didn't have competition. You know what I mean? Like there is no competition because as long as I go out there and I give my 110%, then that's all that can be asked of me, right? But then I might be in a booth, we're kicking ass, taking names, and then I find out that my partner or somebody down the street is doing better. Well, yeah, now I want to know, okay, what are you doing that you're doing better than me? That's what I want to know. So yeah, I love friendly competition can be really good and it can also motivate you. So just wanted to throw that in there.
Absolutely. As a matter of fact, a community is based on that, right? Friendly competition. It's friendly motivation, right? For example, I don't want to feel left out on Mondays when people are sharing their wins. So I need to I know you're forced to reassess your life properly, right? And to be honest, that's been a big motivator for me because I have to sit back on Sunday and count what I've done productive during the week.
See what I made you do?
Yeah, you made me do it. That's it. And it sets grounds for next week. Well, I best start thinking about this winning move early so that I can run that. Discipline, being accountable as well. Go ahead, Keisha.
I've found that competition actually can help you a lot, not just with motivation, but with helping you grow your business because the more people that are talking about the same subject, the more eyes on that subject, which means you now have greater access to more people that may not have noticed you off of your efforts alone. So
Absolutely.
I really don't see competition as competition. I literally use it as you move further faster.
Absolutely. That is the secret. In this, again, it's only technically at school that copying is cheating. But in life, everything that you get from somebody that is doing the same thing as you is good advice, is good information, right? Always. And you have to understand that in that way that we're saying competition, we're saying competitors because that's the word that we need to use, that we choose to use. But for me, we're partners in the industry. What have you done lately? Right? And remember that if you did something enough for me to notice you, there's value that I need to acquire from there. Right? Same thing, for example, when we're leveraging our digital card, for example, I show you mine. What you got? Right? Direct show of force in this case. It's I'm leveraging my skill. I know the competition, or I know the audience. I know who I'm speaking to. I know how they operate. So I'll start with this. Or when you are speaking to them, this is how they approach you. Well, it's no different, but I have this added value in my service offer. I leverage the competition, right? So it's a good thing to be aware of what they're doing. It's the final touch, I would say, on your preparation before you start rolling out. Okay, I've done my brand study, I've done all this. I am sure and certain that this is the mark. First, let me see if we're doing this only at the same time at the end. That is, first, let me see if this is if there's an echo of this emotion in this space. Is there anybody else doing the same thing by name, by trade? What are they doing? If is my product similar? Okay, great. Well, how are they doing it? And where do I get more value to offer? And that allows you already to have a real conversation ready as you're basically diving in the blueprints to see. Go ahead, Robert. Robert?
The word that just came to my mind too is you could potentially leverage.
Absolutely.
As an example, my last name is Blakely. There's a few famous Blakeleys out there. Right. So
Yeah.
just like there's a bunch of Dr. Lisa Singletaries, as we found out.
Yeah. Me, for example, there's one Virgil that I'm definitely gone. Often enough, I'm referred to the Virgil in Dante's tales there, but in the industry that I'm in, there's one Virgil, Ablo. I mean, I want to do a case study on his approach at branding and how he used that in fashion and established over time a very quick and solid fashion empire, and uh, and then left
Does
us early like a legend. I
does he
mean,
spell his name with an E at the end?
no, there's no E. There's no E.
So it's the French version,
I
huh?
don't think so. And it's I mean. Case study. Even some of the conversation that I came to build, I have inspired from certain uh, 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 podcast of him describing his approach in the modern age at the concept of branding, building community, or what defines basically what he calls a designer or a creative artist, right?
There you go.
And it's pretty cool. It's pretty cool.
I'm gonna
He
start
had a very,
spying on him even more.
yeah, yeah. So no, definitely. So understanding your competitors, it's valid on the terrain. It's valid even more so in this space. They're the direct people that we have to, um, well, keep in mind when we're talking to our client because we need to leverage whatever strength we have, and our strength is vis-a-vis of something else. There's also that which is very important. How is your product unique? It means what does it do differently from others? That's the real translation of this question from a client, right? When a client asks you, how is your product unique? Uniqueness is not something that they uh, are looking for because they know that, well, if I'm looking for a good wrench, there's going to be a couple of them on the shelf and I need to pick the best one. So what makes your product unique? But it's a wrench, right? How well the handle is coated with anti-slip. There's then you start looking at what you have done beyond. your competitors or what your competitor has not done, and which is the same thing to start placing this product. Right? So it's even more important for us to understand at this level or in this industry of network marketing, who are the leaders? The leaders are the highest achievers. Okay, well, how are they achieving this? Right? What am I hearing on this side of the equation? What am I hearing on that side of the equation? How does that align with my understanding? Or how does that reinforce my product? Or how does that allow me to quickly align myself with the business strategy that gets the client responsive and
Hey,
all that.
hey, Virgil.
Yeah, go ahead, Dell. It's Dell.
Sorry, Dale. Go ahead and unmute yourself again. Sorry, I just heard background noise and please unmute yourself again.
How's that? Can you hear me now?
Yes,
Yeah.
thank you. My
I was going to
apologies.
share a little story that some of you may have heard before, advertising, marketing related. If you remember back, if you're over 50 years old, if you remember back in the good old days, there used to be a mouthwash called Listerine, and
Listerine.
it was the only one on the marketplace for many many years, and it was. And if you've ever tasted it, if you haven't, I'd encourage you to stop by your drugstore and buy you some today. But buy the gold type. It's a gold
Oh,
color.
but that's the worst one.
And yeah, exactly. And what it was back in the day, that was the only one that was available, and that was it. That was what was available. If you wanted mouthwash, that's what it was, and it was really horrible tasting. And really, I really challenge you to go taste it yourself. Well, what happened is back in the day, you remember if you Scope came along and kind of reinvented the mouthwash market. And what they did is they told you that if you used Listerine, you had medicine breath. And then of course the whole marketplace exploded, and now there's a zillion different kinds. There's mouthwash that's all different flavors. You can get it to whiten your teeth. You can get it to fix your gums, make your wrinkles go away, everything. But it started by them going back and attacking Listerine and saying there's a better choice out there, and you don't have to smell like medicine breath. You remember those commercials they used to have about medicine breath, and they would show that it was kind of repulsive to smell somebody with this. And you think about it, it was repulsive, and it was a mouthwash to make you not have a bad breath. They came out and said, no, you don't have to smell like that. So it's kind of an interesting story about knowing your competition, and of course they found millions and millions of dollars there to create new products by just asking the questions and defining their competition.
Exactly. Yeah, that's a gold
Love it.
case
I
study
love it.
there to keep in mind. Just that simple and slight detail in the product approach,
I
right?
love that, by the way, Dale. Thanks for sharing that. That's awesome.
And I taste awful Listerine,
And of course, to be
but
defined
it works.
competition, they defined what they labeled Listerine as medicine breath. And think about that, how powerful that was to say there's a better way. And of course now, but if you haven't ever tasted it, go get you a little jug of that gold Listerine, and you'll learn the story a lot better.
Yeah, no, it is very, very strong. It's the worst one. So simple things like that.
Seriously, me.
So keep that in mind whenever you discover a new product. Okay, well, who's in that same industry? When you are rolling out a new strategy, see, okay, has it been used before, or what is the competitor strategy? What is the top performer? Sometimes people that go across the what we call now the industry disturbers are people that study the biggest players in the market and understand the small gaps in their presentation, right? So even that, understanding who's the competition allows you to find a niche sometimes that they haven't cornered, right? A niche that, well, everybody's favoring this, but there is also this opportunity. Everybody went in the conversation and everybody's very successful talking at that age bracket for which the product was initially done. But quickly looking at it, we can see that there is something happening and I can choose to go where the competitor is now going, or I see somebody branching in that direction, right? Emerging technology usually are how this is how box completely, right? So small things like that. So understand and this forces you also to have gone through the cycle. I can't leverage or I can't understand or scale somebody else's business if I haven't created my own identity, if I haven't gone through these different steps, if I haven't figured out already who I'm speaking to and what they're supposed to be hearing, right? Only after doing this brand evaluation, this creating our brand booklet, outlining our fundamentals that we can really start looking at everything, the audience, how our competitors are working, how our allies also are working. Sometimes we look at things as being competition when they're not. They're actually an ally, depending on what they are not choosing to address. For example, here in this space, a lot of us have our own courses. Well, we could have came here and say, well, where we can't, there's competition. No. Well, there's something that you're doing, there's something that I'm doing. Sometimes there's a missing link or missing glue, and this is where I found my uniqueness in presenting this power, friendly competition community. Right. So definitely let's keep on thriving as a community. Let's keep on keeping in mind these small fundamentals, even though we are striving to become and we will become all elite in this group. And for those who are already elite, they'll go super elite, right? Because perfection is that
That's right.
journey, right?
That's
So,
right. Just keep
and
showing
remember,
up, keep asking the questions.
that's it. But remember that the tallest building is only as solid as his, right? If you're
I love it.
standing on
Willie
no
says,
fundamentals, well, at one point that thing will tilt, and good luck for the rest.
I love what Willie says. We'll end with Willie. He says, I still use Listerine, but it's a new Listerine Naturals with no artificial sweeteners or colors. Mint flavor.
Ooh, you
We'll
can't
see
go wrong with
everybody
me.
tomorrow.
It's always a pleasure. Thank you guys for joining and again for
Have a great
making
day,
this a
everyone.
great day.
Thanks again for a great session. You guys are awesome.
Oh, I sent you an email, Marta, from my personal, the OVRG apparel. You can take a
Okay.
look at it as well.
Okay. Yeah, I will
Perfect.
do that, and then I will schedule an appointment with you next week.
Beautiful.
Thank you.